gentlemen, welcome. It is absolutely great to see all of you here today. Just so you know, we will be going over an absolute lot today. There will be a Prezi involved. Here's how today is going to go. Essentially, we're going to start by just practicing some multiple choice. Always good to do that. I'll then give you a little description about the exam, what you can expect, what to make sure that you're doing that day of, the night before. Then we'll take a little review where I will talk about the overarching themes of the pre-classical through the classical era, and then we will end with some essay prep as we go through the compare and contrast essay. For some of you, this is going to be a more fresh review than for others. For others of you who have not had my class for another couple of months, all of a sudden you have this burning sensation in your stomach where you feel absolutely sick as I say things like direct comparison and analysis statements and thesis statements and all things like that. Just to let you know, I am going to be a little bit harsh if you're just being distracting and talking, because to be honest with you, it's really it's a lot to talk to, a lot of people to talk to at once. And so I'm going to ask that we try to keep our side conversations down to a minimum. We will have some things. We'll have some things where we'll have partners discussing. There will be some of me asking questions as I normally do. But if we could, please just make sure. In addition, I am also trying to be into the 21st century. As you can see with my extremely high-tech setup here, I am recording myself. No, it's not facing you. Do you want me to? Right now it has my hands and my neck and not my face. But what I am doing is recording for those of you, because I know some of you have to leave early. I know some of you are going to be coming in late, and I know a lot of people were saying, I just can't make it to Monday nights. So I am going to be putting these things up onto something. I don't really know. Kendra's going to figure it out. And she doesn't know that she's figuring it out, but I just told her. So Kendra will figure it out how we disseminate that. So, without further ado, go ahead and try to answers numbers 1 and 2. 1 and 2. And try to do it on your own for right now, because on the AP exam, you will not have any friends to discuss things with. Go. Go. Find a stool. Find a chair. You strong down and pull the couch if you need to. You guys put it back in. Why would you say that? Remember, you will not have a friend on the day of the AP exam, so practice not having any friends. So, we have here AP-style questions. Remember, when you are looking at these questions, for some of you, you haven't thought about the Neolithic Revolution in about 4 months. So, you got to remember, there are going to be questions on the AP exam that you don't remember, that you have no idea. That's fine. Calm down, relax. Know that you'll try to remember, and we want to use process of elimination. So as we look through these questions, my first question to you is, which can it not be? Which can't it be, Ms. Schwartz? Why not? Fair enough. So we don't necessarily know. Okay. Or really, I guess Neolithic means what, by the way? New. It does mean new, but Neolithic in particular refers to the agricultural revolution. And we know that brain function had nothing to do with eating grains and other things that were being farmed, as we know from our hashtag paleo friends who think they're way smarter than us. It definitely can't be D. What else can it not be, Juna?
It can't be A.
Yeah, why not?
It's not a development. It was already, people were already hunting beforehand, and helped got worse when we started farming. So
Yeah, great. First of all, people were hunting beforehand. Second of all, enhanced nutrition. Remember our argument from Jared Diamond's wonderful argument about farming being the worst mistake ever made. We'll talk about that more. It definitely did not improve human nutrition. What else can it not be? Nate, just say it.
B.
Why?
Because they did not have weapons.
It cannot be B. However, your reasoning for why it cannot be B is not necessarily it. And I would think, actually, here's the deal. The question asks you what? Say it, Juna, louder. Yeah, it's asking about the most significant difference. We know that there was some warfare. Actually, they've recently, this year, actually discovered Paleolithic evidence for Paleolithic warfare. There was warfare that was happening, and the bronze technology that was developed are going to mimic some of those stone and bone tools. And so it's not as significant as C. Does that make sense? It's not as significant as C. Because we know with the development of the Neolithic Revolution, the adoption of settled agriculture allowed for more densely populated civil societies. Yes, good. Excellent. However, at the outset, you had 25% to get this question right or wrong. Right? Or 70, I don't know, whatever the statistics are, I can't do math. But when, just by eliminating those two that we knew off the bat were wrong, you then had a 50% chance. If you had put it down to B and C, good job. Does that make sense? We definitely want to have at least 50% chance on each of the questions that we're asking. Number 2, many historians believe the transition and from hunting and gathering to agriculture led to societies that were more, my gosh, I wish that you had a teacher that went over vocabulary like this. Things like egalitarian and patriarchal. I just wish you had a teacher who actually cared enough about his students to teach you vocabulary like this. What do we know? It cannot be. Yeah, it certainly cannot be A. Isolated? No. We know that one of the things, if our ways of the world, right? One of our ways of the world is that humanity has become ever increasingly intermixed and intermingled, usually through trade, and unfortunately through dating and marriage. What else can it not be? It certainly cannot be B. Why, Avi? Yeah, absolutely, because egalitarian means what? Yeah, equal, good. And what else can it not be? D. Yeah, it can't be D. Dispersed? Dispersed? Dispersed, people were, even before agriculture, people were already moving out of Africa. We already see that. That's where people come from Africa into the Americas, which is something we'll talk about. So they're not more dispersed. However, they are more patriarchal, which means what? Yeah, men have more power. Good. Men have more power. All right, let's see if we can do some more. Maybe. Do that with you? No, wrong way. have no friends. Don't have friends. All right. Some of these questions that you will be asked will have what are called stimulus prompts. They will give you a passage, usually about this long, maybe a little bit longer, but certainly not much longer than this. Or they'll give you a graph, or they'll give you an image, and they will say, please respond to this question based off of what is in the image. Sometimes you'll want to use just the passage. Other times, they're testing you to see what you know about the time period. So we have here, the text above was primarily intended to, which one can it not be?
A.
Why can it not be A, Nate?
Because it is talking about
Because it can't be A, because it's not A. Well, does it talk anything about polytheism or monotheism? By the way, what is polytheism? Yeah, multiple gods, monotheism. Does it talk anything about that? No, so it can't be the intention of this document. Good. What else can it not be? Yeah, it can't be B. Why? Again, does it talk about the equal importance of any of the gods? Does it talk about the god? No. And then D, it cannot be D. Why?
Because it doesn't mention servants.
Yeah, it doesn't really mention servants necessarily.
They're doing it to kind of praise them in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't say anything about them being servants, but it does say Babylon has a special relationship with the god Marduk. Got it? Again, if only you had a teacher who asked you what the purpose of documents were, and you got used to doing things like that. If only wrong computer. If only you had a teacher who actually cared. Uh-oh. That could be the end of my... That's not really how it goes. Huh. That's not... All right, here we go. 2, 5, 6, and 10. 5, 6, and 10. 5, 6, and 10. Another 15 seconds. Five, four, three, two, one. Which of the following constitutes a significant continuity in the Afro-Eurasian history from 600 to 600, which, by the way, is what time period? The classical era is 600 to 600. So what is something that stays the same from 600 to 600? What can it not be? Why can't it be A? Because China was awesome then. Also, the Mediterranean was also awesome as well. That's the Roman Empire. Political fragmentation will not come around to the post-classical era. Good. What else can it not be? Yeah, it can't be B either because reliance on bronze. What happens after bronze? Iron Age. Nicely done, Miss Schwartz. Good. And lastly, it cannot be what?
C.
What else can it not be?
C.
Why can't it be C?
Because they already
Yeah, because there's still, not everybody is using an alphabetic system of writing. However, that does come about early on during the classical era. But you're right, not everybody is using that. Good. Whoop. Yeah, there you go. That's exactly it. Good. And lastly, therefore, it has to be D. Sorry, ladies, the subordinate social position of women in sedentary agrarian. By the way, agrarian means what? Agriculture. Good. Okay, number 6. Which of the following was the primary method used in both Qin China and Mauryan India to maintain control over their empire? Woo! Which can it not be?
C.
Why not?
Because they did not fragment small states.
Yeah, absolutely not. First of all, if you can't remember the Mauryan Empire, Ashoka, if you can't remember the Mauryan Empire, most of you probably remember Qin Shi Huangdi, and I think you remember Qin Shi Huangdi is remembered for doing what to China? Unifying it. So at the very least, you got that. What else can it not be? Yeah, why not B?
Because it didn't force conversion.
Yeah, there's no forced conversion in China, and in India, Ashoka is not forcing people to convert to Buddhism, even though he is a Buddhist himself. Good. What else can it not be?
C.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, it doesn't really happen in the Mauryan dynasty. Now, it happens to a certain degree in the Qin, but even the Qin is still going to have regional differences in writing.
It wasn't the primary method.
What?
It wasn't the primary method.
Yeah, exactly, and that's also not the primary method. So, therefore, by process of elimination, it has to be A. It has to be A. Now, again, are they asking you extremely specific questions about the Mauryan dynasty? No. Are they asking you about Qin Shi Huangdi's specific use of the crossbow in developing a military? No. They're asking you very general questions that I had you do in class. Does that mean that you should not study those specifics? No. You should study those specifics because what you are going to remember are certain pieces of evidence for each of the different empires. What you can then do is process of elimination based off of the evidence that you remember. That makes sense? Okay. For the sake of time, I'm going to say let's be done with asking questions for right now. If you want to do more questions like this, if you are free, if you want to come in during Royal Time, I can open up the classroom for that. I already have an AP World History Royal Time. I may not be able to give you my undivided attention, but I can also do my absolute best. Fridays will not be good because to make the transition, I just want to let you know, because for many of you, not all of you, but for many of you, this is your first AP exam. And as your first AP exam, I want you to know exactly what you are getting yourself into. First of all, the AP exam is on May 12th. May 12th. May 12th. Got it? Science says that if you say things 3 times, students get it. Because the first time, they're not actually listening. The second time, they vaguely hear something coming out of your mouth. And then the third time, they've usually already asked their neighbor who they listen to more than you anyway. But that's the idea. May 12th is when the exam is. It is in the morning. It's on campus, by the way. It's in the morning. It's late start, but not for you. Late start is not for you. It is going to be at 7:30. You need to be here. And in fact, I would get here at about 7:15 because you have to go check the library to see where on campus you're taking it. Does that make sense? So I would be here no later than 7:15. Get yourself prepared. Do not come for late start. Last year, we had a few students who missed their AP exam and had to buy another one. So you don't want to have to do that. You don't want to miss it because they're not necessarily forgiving in that. So make sure you're here that morning. Yes, Maya? No. I want to say it's 2 weeks after, but I don't remember. Okay, congratulations, by the way. That's awesome. Okay, so a couple of things. Number 1, you're going to be studying from now until the exam. That's what you're going to be doing, right? These review sessions, not enough. These review sessions will help. These review sessions will make you go, I remember that. But these review sessions are not everything that you need to do. You need to be reviewing on your own. However, the night before, no. The night before, no. Go to bed early. Early is not 1 a.m. Early is not midnight. Go to bed at like 10. If you can't go to bed at 10, go to bed at 10:30 or 11. Get yourself some sleep. Does that make sense? In the morning, you need to eat breakfast. For some of you, that is an easier task than others. Do not eat a sugary donut for breakfast. Get yourself some eggs. Get yourself some protein. See, I know things about health too, right? Make sure you are... What? I did do that. But make sure you have a good breakfast. No, don't make your mothers make you breakfast. Do it yourself. Be the young adults that you are. Make sure you are here 7:15. 7:15. You need 2 things. Actually, you need 4 things. Ready? You need a pencil. I would bring at least 3. I would bring 3 pencils. Because, unless you have those lead ones, but if I would bring extra lead if you've got the clicky ones. But they got to be number 2 pencils. Make sure you have that. In addition, please bring black ink. A pen with black ink. You'll be writing your essays in the black ink. Californians and their fear of commitment. Yes, you'll have black ink for the essays. Okay? So you bring pencil, you bring black ink. In addition, bring yourself a granola bar. Bring yourself something. You cannot necessarily eat it during the exam, but they will give you a break in the middle where you can do that. Again, in addition to a granola bar, bring some water. Bring some water. Bring some water. Vivian. What? Test's going to end for you around noon. So, that leads me to my next point. I would imagine, I don't necessarily know, but I would imagine many of you will probably be feeling a little sick, cough, cough, after the AP exam. So if you feel like your brain is going to be absolutely fried, cough, cough, after the AP exam, maybe it's best that you, cough, cough, go home. I would not say that that's an official policy. I went to school after my AP exams and was fine, but if you feel like you're going to be drained, and I have a feeling you will be after that exam, just know it's not unheard of. So, you're going to show up at 7:15. You are going to go to the library, and you are going to check out what room you are taking the exam. You will be in that room before 7:30. At 7:30, they will start giving you instructions. And they will have you guys have taken standardized tests before, so you understand this. They're going to be taking, they'll have you fill out a little answer key. They'll have you fill out the booklet. They'll give you the exam. You will then have 55 minutes to answer 70 multiple choice questions. You will have 55 minutes to answer 70 multiple choice questions, like the ones that we just looked at there. Got it? Then they will have you close the test booklet, and you will have a break. On that break, you will have some water. You will eat a granola bar. You will, or something not sugary, and you will go to the bathroom if you have to. You will not be allowed to discuss answers, by the way, so make sure that you don't do that. Then you will come back. It'll only be about a 5, maybe 10-minute max break. You will then come back, and you will be given another booklet. That booklet is going to have the essay section of the test. So therefore, you will, and they will say, don't open it, don't open the seal until we say so. You will then be given the 10 minutes to read the documents of the DBQ. So you can't start writing yet, but you can read the documents and mark up the documents as you need to for the document-based question. If you're in my class right now, we're getting there. Probably next week will be when I give you your first DBQ, right? So, just so you know, that'll be that 10 minutes. After the 10 minutes, just like I did for your exams, they will say, you may now begin the essay section. And you then have the rest of the time, which is an hour and 48 times 320 plus 130. You have 130 minutes to write 3 essays. You will be writing, ready? The DBQ, the compare and contrast, and the CCOT essay. You'll be given one of each of those. Does that make sense? Now, you gotta be aware. They will not be nice like Mr. Oftedal was. They will not say, you have 30 minutes. You have 40. If you haven't started your CNC essay, you should start now. They will tell you, you have 30 minutes left. You will have 10 minutes left. They will give you the time. They'll give you a time. They'll say, look at that. So you need to just know, I would wear a watch. I would wear a watch. Something that lets you know, because you can't take out your cell phone or your scores don't count. So some of you are like, what's a watch? Right? But the idea is wear a watch because you're going to want to be able to tell time. Got it? Then you're done. Once you're done, then you go, you eat yourself some lunch, you go run to my classroom, tell me about how awesome the experience was, and how you absolutely felt like you rocked it and nailed it, or you just never look at me again. Either way, that is it. Any questions on the actual exam itself, the exam day? Emily? Yeah. Third question? Any other questions, test day? You will miss first and second period. And that'll be an excused absence. That'll be an excused absence. Nate? No. You'll be taking it's probably alphabetical. I think it was alphabetical last year. So you'll be taking it with people from other classes, Miss Jacobson's class, Mr. Eckert's class as well. It'll be all mixed. I'm going to do my absolute best to try to run around to say good luck, even though none of you will need it. However, last year I got in trouble, and they yelled at me for trying to get into the room. They said, "You can't be here." And I said, "Whoa, good luck, bye," and then I ran away. Anyway, so I will try to do that. That's my absolute goal. Got it? Yeah. Okay. So now let's focus on going through, and I don't know, so I'm just going to make sure. Let's focus on going through the pre-classical to the classical era. You do not have to take notes on this. No, you do not have to. But if you'd like to, you can. You can probably find it. Alright, let's give you about 10 seconds to transition. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So our class starts at about 10,000 BCE. Actually, I lied to you. It starts way earlier than that. It starts at the dawn of humanity. Now, the dawn of humanity until 10,000 BCE is known as the Paleolithic era. The Paleolithic era. That is considered the Stone Age, or prehistory, which essentially means history before the art of writing, before writing was developed. So when we talk about the Paleolithic peoples, pick a pack of pickled peppers, we're talking about those who lived before agriculture. When we talk about the Neolithic Revolution, which happens at about 12,000 to 10,000 BCE, we're talking about the Neolithic Revolution, or the revolution in farming. So the first thing we want to look at is what differentiates, because this time period is known as the pre-classical era. And if we all remember, the theme of the pre-classical era was what? Agriculture is one of them. What does it mean to be civilized? Because this is the dawn of civilization. Wow, all it took was somebody to say, what does it mean to be? And you remembered. Good. So what does it mean to be civilized? It's the dawn of civilization. And one of those things is going to be that transition out of Paleolithic into the Neolithic. But before we get into that, we want to look at the hashtag paleo life. The life that people lived before agriculture. And you probably know some people who live the hashtag paleo life, and they walk around with big slabs of raw meat, and they go, I'm way healthier than you. Right? Paleo life, to start out with, is the first idea of the developing of the human species. And the human species are going to be those who are hominids. And there's things that differentiate humans from other species of animals. Right? And what we see is some of the things that really separate humans from other animals. Well, number one, we walk on two legs. We walk on two legs. Number two, we have opposable thumbs in which we build and use tools. And we even create tools in order to help us do easy tasks, which leads me to my next thing. Humans, as we know, do not just idly sit back and wait for evolution to work. We make the earth work for us. We impact our environment as the environment also impacts us. But we try to do things actively in order to change that. In addition, our brains are found to be more complex than other animals. We are known for problem solving and particularly taking long journeys for a specific purpose. And that's what makes us hominids. Our official genus, because what's something that's really weird about humanity before the agricultural revolution is that there were different species of humans, which is really weird to think about. There were other humanoid species that look kind of human, but don't have the same characteristics. Our specific genus that eventually either intermarried or just killed off the other ones are the Homo sapiens, or for simple, Homo sapiens. The lifestyle of those who were hashtag paleo was hunting and gathering. And what we know about hunting and gathering is that it's a nomadic style of living. People are walking around, usually in a migratory pattern, chasing large mammals that they are using for food source. As they are chasing these large animals and following these large animals around for food, they're also gathering whatever else they can find. And so what winds up being is really just small bands of egalitarian kinship societies. These small groups of maybe about 20 people are going to be your family and your livelihood. And when we say egalitarian, we mean the fact that they are, for the most part, equal. Men are the ones who are hunting, but women are the ones who are gathering. And remember, when men would think about getting too big for their britches, as men do on occasion, women would so graciously remind them that 70% of their diet came from gathering, and that men were only responsible for about 20 or 30, I guess 30%, because 70, 30, there you go, about 30% of their diet, which was meat for the hunting. And so really, men depended upon women who were doing that. So while they're not doing the exact same thing, they're still more of an egalitarian society. In addition, you're traveling around. You are not accumulating things which would cause wealth. Now, we had some examples of those society. The San of Africa, the Chumash of Santa Barbara were the ones that Strayer uses. And particularly just to talk about egalitarian societies that would try not to have any one group of people gaining more power than the others. The San did, one of my personal favorites in the textbook, the insulting of the meat, the mocking of the meat. When a hunter would kill an animal and bring back the meat, they would lay it down, and all the other hunters would talk about how awful it was, and how bad of a job that person did killing, and how small the piece of meat, so that no one person got too proud of the things that they did. In addition, you had things like it was not the person who killed the animal that gets the credit for the hunt. It's actually the person who owned the arrow or the spear that would actually get credit for it. So you have these things that try to help to maintain a more egalitarian society. Did some have more unequal relationships? Yes. And oftentimes what you would have in these hunter-gatherer societies, and particularly with kinship groups, is some elders or adults would probably have and make decisions for the group. It's not like the children and the adults were doing the same thing. So sometimes you did have age-related tasks and respect going up the age group. So it's not totally egalitarian, but definitely much more than we see. While we generally think about Paleolithic people not having a very big impact on the environment, we do know that they did have some impact. Largely, this is their control over fire. Again, one of those things that separates us from animals is humans changing their environment. And using fire is one of those examples. And we know to encourage the growth in places in their migratory pattern, they would use fire as well. They'd also use it for protection and obviously light. Something that students find interesting typically is that we are all Africans because humanity and humans develop. Ms. Schwartz is very excited about that one. And Africans, we all did, our Homo sapiens. Don't you remember you got very excited when we talked about that the first time? You actually jumped up and down. The idea is about 100,000 years ago, when we see our species really developing, we do see it starting in Africa and moving out. Now, remember, this is the time of the Ice Age, and so humans really are able to, because of ice, migrate and walk. And you know that one of those examples of walking and human migration is over the land bridge from Siberia into the Americas and then down. So you do know that humans spread out of Africa. You know that spread happened over an extremely long period of time and typically was very slow, like one family at a time. One thing I remember from 7th grade world history is particularly that if you wanted to cross the land bridge, they only took people that were very healthy. So if you've ever broken a bone, which we all know Mr. Oftedal would not have been taken because he broke his thumb, if you ever had any sort of other physical injury, you would have been left behind, probably to die, which is fine. So that is the hashtag paleo lifestyle. We talked about relative equality. That includes relative equality between the sexes as well. We looked at politically, there are more egalitarian bands of kinship. That doesn't mean that conflict didn't happen. Again, we do have evidence of warfare from the Paleolithic era. However, it's just not going to be as much. So from about 10,000 years ago, well, actually more than that, about 12,000 to 14,000 years ago, humanity began to change, and probably, as Jared Diamond argues, made the worst mistake humanity has ever made. So, and that is farming, the development of agriculture. Now, I want you to understand that this is a very gradual process. A very gradual process that took a very long time, which is, I guess, the definition of gradual. But a few of the causes that we just want to make sure we understand. Why 12,000 years ago was there farming? What is it that happened that would cause this major shift in the way that people lived? Well, one of them is the end of the Ice Age. As the ice began to melt, the land just became, obviously, easier to farm. It's much easier to farm and to plow when the ground isn't frozen. Right? So you have the end of the Ice Age. This also causes the extinction of large mammals. It's going to cause large mammals to go farther and farther north. Not only was it the extinction of large mammals because of the Ice Age, humans also did, rest in peace, the woolly rhinoceros, which was still alive. But you do have the extinction of large animals, and then again, certain revolutions over time. Humans were already very well connected to the environment. Hunters and gatherers, as we know from surviving hunter and gatherer societies today, have a very extensive knowledge of their surroundings and of the earth. And so they were able to notice things and notice when crops would grow in more favorable conditions. So you even see humans, before farming is even really invented, taking active steps to already do that. There are some new inventions that help them. My personal favorite is the digging stick, literally because it's a stick that's been sharpened at one end and you just and then stick a seed in. So the digging stick, which eventually turns into a shovel, and which then gets better and better as agriculture spreads. Another tool that's going to be very helpful in collecting is the scythe, right? Which you all know from Pokemon, because Scyther. But the scythe is the really curved blade that helps you to both cut and gather wheat at the same time. One of the things that you need to know about the agricultural revolution that many of you probably remember is it happened separately and independently in different parts of the world. It did not just start in one place and spread out like other things. It actually starts and happens in multiple different places at around the same time. And something that you'll want to make sure you understand is where that happened and what are the variations in that. For example, agriculture goes to Papua New Guinea and the places of Polynesia much, much later, after agriculture had already been developed in Asia, when you see people taking boats from Asia into Polynesia and bringing agriculture to them. So you just want to make sure you understand there are regional variations, but much of it is the same, particularly with these causes. What happens because of farming? Why, pray tell, does Jared Diamond call it the worst mistake ever made? Jared Diamond. But you have, first of all, social hierarchies developing. For the first time in human history, humans are settling down. And when they settle down and they begin to form these little communities, what you see is people able to accumulate things. And this starts with just the accumulation of food, and then eventually, as specialization occurs, you are going to see other goods and things that will separate people in different societies. In the Chumash you saw, especially even though they were more of a hunter-gatherer society, as they do develop some agriculture and settle more, the tumul or the canoe becomes the separating good. And in addition, it comes to land ownership. If your land is more fertile than mine, you have food, I don't, therefore I need to survive. How am I going to survive? I'm probably going to work on your farm and you're going to relax a little bit. Does that make sense? So ownership is what causes social hierarchies. Not to mention disease. Jared Diamond talks about how the diseases mainly due to the fact that humans were closer to animals, and those stinky, gross animals who are pooping everywhere are also bringing with diseases, and with humans also settling in closer communities, as you all know, especially as you look around this room and see who's snotting and who's not, you are probably spreading diseases. Nicely done. Conflict is another thing, again, with some societies having and others not. What is natural? Natural is going to be humans fighting over the limited resources that they have availability to. We know that one of those major themes of world history, those ways of the world that we talk about, anytime you see an improvement in farming, what happens? You have a population growth. That's young Kendra and everybody else who was at least thinking it. I talked about the specialization of labor. As less people have to farm, and as there's a surplus of food grown for a community, people can begin to do other things. And even in very early settled societies, we see things like weaving, baskets, knitting, pottery. Those are going to be the first forms of specialized tasks. Does that make sense? Good. And lastly, ladies, patriarchy. And why, pray tell, did patriarchy come about after the agricultural revolution, Juna?
Since they're settling down, women were mostly at home taking care of their children.
Yes, women are taking care of the children. There is that natural, well, you're a woman, the baby comes out of you, you take care of it. But there's also, please don't repeat that. The other thing is, I'm recording this is good. The other thing is what? What happens? Yes, go ahead, Vivian. I can't really hear you, so I'm going to assume that you're 100% correct. And what Vivian was probably saying is that, and some of you are like, God, I wish he did that on my test. What Vivian probably said was that agriculture became more labor intensive. And, Maya, don't hurt me, but some men are stronger than women. In general, not all, Maya, but in general, men are stronger than women. And so men are going to do the more intensive labor that is responsible. In addition, with conflict happening, men are going to take up the role of protecting. And so when men take the more intensive labor and they also take up the defense of your things and stuff, they are going to begin to see women as even a part of their possessions that they are protecting. Does that make sense? Good. Lastly is metallurgy, which starts with humans really creating these kilns in which they can melt metals and make stronger tools. The first we see is copper. Eventually, bronze is used when you mix copper and tin. I had to look that one up so that I wouldn't embarrass myself in front of you AP chemistry students. And then in about 3500 BCE is the Bronze Age. By the way, you might want to write that down. 3500 BCE is the Bronze Age. At about 1500 BCE is the Iron Age. Iron Age. And don't ask me what iron is, but I think it's just iron. Iron Age is 1500. So 3500 BCE for the Bronze Age, 1500 for the Iron Age. And we see most places, actually all places, that's not true. Most places where we see agriculture developing, we also see metallurgy. Before I move this slide, I want to make sure I cover one thing, and that is not only do we see regional and local inequality developing, we also see global inequality. And this goes back to Jared Diamond's argument from Guns, Germs, and Steel. When we look at what gave some societies a leg up over others. And that's where we're going to see some of those regional differences in the agricultural revolution. Well, number one, the Americas are going to develop differently. And if you remember, what's one of the major things that causes the Americas to develop differently? Number one, different crops. Number two, the north-south orientation. You're going to have different tropical zones, which are going to have different types of agriculture developing. And number three, the major difference between the Americas and Afro-Eurasia is the absence of labor-intensive animals. What am I thinking? Domesticated. Beasts of burden. That's right. Remember, Jared Diamond says that women became beasts of burden, and that's gross. But yeah, you absolutely have beasts of burden absent from the Americas. I'm sorry, they're pretty, they're fun, but llamas just don't do the trick. And so you are going to have also international differences as well. So as farming becomes more developed and these more settled societies are developed after agriculture, particularly you have chiefdoms forming, you have agricultural village societies forming, and if you should remember some of these, and lastly, you have pastoral societies. We'll get to pastoral societies in a second. Vivian. Yes. So, I'll start here. Now, I just want to go through your core civilizations. These are going to be your landed agricultural civilizations. These civilizations that are the main ones from the pre-classical era. And what are called and what you remember as the first civilizations. So as humanity is developing through the agricultural revolution in about 3500 BCE, particularly with the development of bronze technology, what you start to see happening are larger centralized states. Now, oftentimes when I say centralized, these are going to be very small centralized states. For the most part, they are going to be small city-states that will get a little bit larger and develop small empires. But your core civilizations are going to be in China, the Shang, and the Zhou. Now, there is one before that, the Xia, but they're not actually even sure if it really existed. So for all intents and purposes, the Shang and the Zhou are going to be your first civilizations in China. In Africa, you all know this. You came into the class knowing this. Egypt. Egypt is going to be your main civilization. There will be a small little civilization called Nubia below Egypt that interacts with them. You will have in Southwest Asia, you know this as the Fertile Crescent. This is Mesopotamia, and this is the dawn of civilization. The dawn of civilization. This is Gilgamesh. This is Hammurabi and his code. The Mesopotamians had different civilizations that were power at different times. It starts with the Sumerians. If you remember, Ms. Schwartz does, but Spence-Ur, the city of Ur in Sumer, it was one of those city-states. Eventually the Babylonians take over, then the Assyrians, then the Hittites, chariots, and then the Babylonians take over again and have a second Babylonian empire. Good. In India, this is the civilization of Harappa, which had two main cities, Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro. Mohenjo-Daro had better city plumbing than even some cities in Europe during the Middle Ages, and actually even into the modern era, because Europeans were disgusting and just put their poop in the streets. Because Europeans are awful. India, Harappa, and Mohenjo-Daro. And then the two American civilizations that are most famous are going to be the Olmec and the Chauvin. And you remember the Olmec because those are the giant heads. The giant heads that make no sense. In addition, you do have some other civilizations. In Africa, particularly important are the Bantu-speaking people. These are the people in Africa who are spreading culture. My goodness. Who are spreading out culture in Africa, spreading agriculture around Africa, including metallurgy. Remember, family by family. In Central Asia, you're going to have some pastoral peoples developing, particularly the Indo-Europeans from southern Russia and Ukraine area. Right, Elizabeth? You know that. And Southwest Asia, you do have the Hebrews as a specific group of people, and any of you with Jewish heritage are all the way back to that time period. Juno, you've been very patient.
Will you be putting these presents online?
They're already online. I should probably figure out a way to give you the link to them, which is not hard for me to do, but I just have to do it. So here's what I'm going to tell you. And we have to go fairly quickly because we're actually running out of time. But one thing that I want you to know is, in general, what does it mean to be civilized? As humanity has developed from Paleolithic lifestyle through the agricultural revolution and is now developing into these larger civilizations. If you're going to talk, please just go. These larger civilizations. What does that mean? What do we see happening? Because in world history, we want to focus on the general trends and the exceptions. So what are those general trends? Well, number one, all of these civilizations are developing because of a surplus in agriculture. Are they going to be involved in trade? Yes, absolutely. We have evidence of specific civilizations trading during this time. And really, there's a lot of theories going on in world history that much of European civilization was actually adopted from trade that starts in the early Indian civilization. But that's a whole other thing. If you had Mrs. Jacobson, you read the Southernization article. One of the things that we really see happening amongst all of these places are cities. Cities! As agriculture develops and these civilizations are developing more and more surplus, what you see are cities developing. Typically, cities are developing as places of protection. There are walls that are developed so that people can be protected from other competitive societies, which then shows that there is evidence for warfare as well. And warfare is going to be dependent upon what type of military technology you have, whether or not you have bronze at first, and then eventually whether or not you have chariots, and then whether or not you have iron. That is going to be it. With cities also comes urban planning. As I mentioned, Mohenjo-Daro is extremely famous for having some of the best plumbing in the world, and Mohenjo-Daro actually having better plumbing than some cities during the modern era in Europe. So that's just something to note as far as city planning. But like I said, you always had walls, and you also had monumental architecture. And you remember examples of those monumental architecture in Egypt. We all know the pyramids, right? The pyramids in Egypt. But you also have the ziggurats in Mesopotamia. And the ziggurat you see here is like a pyramid, only it's just got levels and usually has one big long staircase that goes up. Usually they're religious in function, but you do see monumental architecture all around the world, including in the Americas with those giant heads, which you can kind of see on the right there from the Olmec. Why they made them, we still don't really know. Another thing that we see happening is, and I already talked about metallurgy and military technology, the Hittites are the ones that are credited with spreading, and the Hyksos are spreading chariot technology around. Hittites to Mesopotamia, Hyksos to Egypt, and then eventually chariot technology goes all the way to China. Writing is something that is developed during this time period. Writing in all of our civilizations in some form or another. In Egypt, it's the hieroglyphics. In Mesopotamia, it's cuneiform. In China, there's these really weird things around the back of a turtle. They would write some things, and then they'd throw them on these bones, and then they'd predict the future. Oracle bones in China is what was used as writing. It was seen as a divine way of seeing the future. And even in India, in Harappan society, we do have some sort of letters. However, it has not been deciphered yet, but you can see evidence for writing. In the Americas, you see the developing of complicated knots that turn into quipu. All of these things are originally seen as a way to organize and keep track of agricultural output. So that's writing. You all know it. Codified laws. Codified laws means what? They're written down, and the most famous of our early civilizations' codified laws is our friend Hammurabi, because you remember Hammurabi's code and Lex Talionis, eye for an eye justice. If Kevin hits me in the face, I get to hit Kevin right in the face. And I probably won't use my left hand, I'll probably use my right. But the idea is, I would never hit you, Kevin, don't worry. The idea is you have codified, written down law codes. That is something that you are going to see happening in most of these civilizations. You also, as agriculture becomes more and more efficient, you have those elites, those nobility that are owning the agricultural land. They're going to be the ones sponsoring art. They're going to be the ones who are having painters paint wall murals. Those are going to be the ones sponsoring any sort of bronze metalwork. The Shang dynasty, for example, actually kept bronze metallurgy a secret only to the aristocracy. So it's only the aristocracy that could have anything bronze, and they were buried in these bronze casket things and bronze armor just to show their wealth. We are talking about regional and trans-regional trade. Other term for trans-regional is inter-regional trade between regions, particularly between Egypt and Mesopotamia, but you also even have between China and India, and some trade even developing from India into Africa and Mesopotamia. Social stratification is kind of obvious, we've talked about. And then again, yes, patriarchy is developing. And we have to understand, when we look at patriarchy developing, particularly in Mesopotamia, this is when you start to see women being separated from men and actually seen as some sort of property, or at least prize, that is to be protected. And so women are wearing the veil in Mesopotamia. Women are being kept in a harem in Mesopotamia. These are ancient traditions, not necessarily something that comes up often in Islam. These are the in generals. The exception is, and I really didn't talk about it here. In addition, you also have centralized kingships. centralized kingships. That goes with codified laws, but they're kings who are in charge of most of these places. The exception is the Harappan civilization in India, which never really develops a centralized authority. It seems that they had some sort of bureaucracy, but really it seemed to be more egalitarian, and no one person was controlling. Probably had, if anything, an aristocracy or an oligarchy of wealthy people who were controlling things. Oh, we gotta go. Civilized. Now, we move from our first civilization to the classical era, because that's classic, right? The classical era. Now, this is the time period that we see much of the world really developing their traditions and their what makes them them. Even communist China looked back to classical China as an example. Look back to Qin Shi Huangdi. Mao Zedong compares himself to Qin Shi Huangdi as somebody who unifies China. The Europeans look back at Greece and Rome and say, whew, those were the glory days, right? When Europe actually had a common heritage under the Roman Empire and under the Greeks, particularly democracy and other things like that. India looks at the Mauryan and the Gupta Empire as really solidifying this culture, and this is going to happen in multiple different ways. And the first way that you're going to see these classical civilizations is the building of large empires. And so, just to go through them very quickly, in East Asia, in China, you're going to have the Qin and the Han dynasty. First semester students, I gotta say, I'm slightly upset with myself. We did focus a lot on Qin and Qin Shi Huangdi. Qin Shi Huangdi, awesome, a lot of fun to study. Really enjoy studying Qin Shi Huangdi. But the classical civilization of China is the Han dynasty. So make sure you understand, and I would review, if you're going to review classical China, you already know enough about Qin Shi Huangdi. Really focus on the Han dynasty in your studies. I think that'll be a better use of your time. In South Asian, that's the Mauryan Ashoka and the Gupta Empire, the founder of the Mauryan Empire being Chandragupta Maurya, not to be confused with the founder of the Gupta Empire, Chandragupta. But you do have, in Europe, Greece and Rome. In Southwest Asia, this is the time of the Persians. And remember, nobody is cool unless they fight the Persians. And the Americas, the Maya, the city-state of Teotihuacan, the Moche are going to be those classical civilizations. And the America, when you look at the Aztec, particularly, and those people who are developed in Central America, the Maya are going to be that classic tradition of bloodletting and sacrifices and the gods from there. Yes, other civilizations that are around during this time period that really play a fairly major part, mostly in the collapsing of empires, is the Xiongnu Confederation in Central Asia and the European barbarians, who are Germanic pastoral peoples as well, who have migrated over from Indo-Europe. Again, Elizabeth's area of Russia, Ukraine. The building of empires. How do you build an empire? Remember, this is one of our things when we look at the classical era. When we think about what does it look like to have a classic empire. Dude, that's classic. A classic empire. Well, number one is going to be a centralized government. You are going to have centralized authority from one specific place, usually, always a city, and you're going to have one person who is in charge. That is an emperor. You know that in China, it is Qin Shi Huangdi. Han Wudi was one of the Han emperors, largely responsible for the creation of the civil service exams. You're also going to have Darius the lawgiver in Persia. Yes, for those of you gentlemen usually who really like 300, Xerxes is an example of an all-powerful monarch that you see in 300. And they are going to have specific capitals that they are working out of. Rome being an example. In Greece, as the Athenian Empire develops, you see Athens and Sparta being one of those cities. In Persia, it's Persepolis. No, it has nothing to do with the book, the graphic novel that you are reading. Well, it is, because it's that. Anyway. Yes. Now, these kings are not, and these emperors are not able to do everything on their own. So you do see elaborate bureaucracies being used in all of our major agricultural civilizations. And I don't have time to go through all of them, but some examples are in Persia. You have the satraps. The satraps are those local governors appointed from local positions who are loyal to the king. In order to ensure loyalty, the Persians use the eyes and the ears of the king, those imperial spies that report on them. In Rome, you know that there were local governors who were sent out, usually from Rome. Oftentimes, they're military officials as well. Ashoka does the same thing in the Mauryan dynasty. The best example of a bureaucracy, as we'll talk about in a second, is the development of the civil service examination with Confucian civil servants and scholars who are going to make up the bureaucracy of China, as we know as an example. Codified laws, the best example I can give you is Ashoka and his rock and pillar edicts. Rock and pillar edicts. You will read those. You will read Hammurabi's Code, and you will read the rock and pillar edicts. It will be on the AP exam in some form or the other. Cities. Cities were developed at this time, especially to promote awe, to make people think, great. If you remember, the best example of this is what makes it #cool to be Roman, is that if you are conquered by the Roman Empire, you get all the cool things that comes with being a Roman Empire, like a Roman city with broad streets that have a central location for you to go to a public bath, to worship, a public market. You're going to get a little coliseum where you can watch people get eaten by tigers, and it's fun. You get a place, a forum for you to discuss political issues. You get Roman roads, and Persia you get roads as well, the royal road. And remember, public works is going to be another example too. Things that are going to help agriculture, the development of irrigation systems, the building of canals, and particularly roads, which are not nice things where people can just travel on. Oh, it's so nice, I can go for a walk. No! Roads are used in order to support large militaries that are going to be crushing any forms of rebellion. In China, an example is the Yellow Turban Rebellion. Spartacus in Rome is an example of the rebellions in Rome. But one of those things that's going to come back to haunt these civilizations is the using of conquered peoples. Again, I'm going through general trends. It is your job to take that specific information that you know from your notes and apply it to those general trends. Something that you probably will get a question on. It has been an essay question in the past, which leads me to believe that it probably won't be an essay question again, but you will probably get some sort of multiple choice question on comparing the fall of empires. And really we want to look at what causes empires to fall. As these empires get extremely expansive, oftentimes they just get too big for themselves. They don't have the technology to maintain authority over a large period of time. And so what winds up happening is they destroy too much of the environment because the elites get way too greedy. That's going to be one way. So economic downturn, agricultural exhaustion is going to lead to the destruction of a major part of your economy, which is going to cause problems. In addition, in order to make up for that, because usually what winds up happening when you have agricultural development, Maya, what happens to civilizations when people get hungry? We talked about this in Euro today. What? Yeah, they turn into Maya, who is going to steal if she sees any of your food out, you better protect it, because she will grab it and it'll be violent, right? So, what happens when people get hungry? They kill other people in order to get food. I'm sorry, Maya, I shouldn't have done that, right? But the idea is you wind up finding you need to find a way to control peasant rebellions. How do you do that? Well, you incorporate some of your enemies into your military. And for those of you that remember the John Green video where we looked at the fall of Rome, it is the addition of the Romans and the barbarians. You do have barbarians sacking Rome in 410, and then again in 476. Nicely done. 476. Nicely done. But you also have the reason for that is because barbarians were used in the military, incorporated into their civilization, and never really fully acclimated. You have the same thing happening in the Han Dynasty with the Xiongnu. Again, that's the whole reason for the Great Wall of China, is to keep those barbarians out of China. Eventually, they become too much, and they cause the fall of the Han Dynasty. Again, the Han Dynasty had already been weakened by the Yellow Turban Rebellion, which had happened because people were hungry, because too much of the environment was destroyed from overuse. Going quickly. Now, in addition to creating a classical civilization, it's not just looking back and saying, boy, those were the good old days of a unified Europe and a unified China. It's also looking at the development of culture. And one of the major developments of culture during this time period is the development of codified, universalizing religions. Religions that are both written down and understood, but also that are meant to provide salvation and hope for anybody who wants to believe. Because as your empire is expanding, you're running into people who don't look like you or talk like you. And so when you start to get variations in your religious beliefs, you want to write it down and say, this is what we believe. And so the example, my personal favorite, is, and I guess don't tell God, but Zoroastrianism in Persia. Zoroastrianism in Persia is one of my personal favorites. It's the first monotheistic religion, which comes out of, like I said, Persia and Zarathustra. It has a single all-powerful deity that battles an evil being, Angramainu. You know the all-powerful deity, by the way, the creator god, because some of you and some of your parents probably drive Mazdas. Ahura Mazda is the all-powerful god protege. But you do have Zoroastrianism. A lot of the beliefs of Zoroastrianism does find its way into Judaism in Mesopotamia as well with the Hebrews and eventually into Christianity. Hinduism, or the Vedic religion, is in South Asia. Now, the Vedic religion is something that is an ancient religion. That is one of the oldest religions in the world. And Hinduism eventually becomes codified, particularly as you have a group of invaders that come from the north called the Aryans, who come in, insert themselves into the Vedic tradition, and then help to codify their beliefs in the Vedas, which is why it's called the Veda religion. Also, eventually, what gets written down is another religious text, the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita is another one. May God bless you. Judaism in Mesopotamia has the Torah as it's written down thing. The Jewish people see themselves as something special. They believe in an all-powerful creator God that intervenes on their behalf. Christianity will come way later than a lot of these other religions in Europe and in Southwest Asia. Let's not forget, Jesus was a Middle Eastern man, so he probably wasn't blonde-haired and blue-eyed, and he might not have even had long hair. It might have actually been scraggly. We're not even sure if he really had a beard. But the idea is Jesus does come out of the Middle East. We do see that developing. And the Bible is going to be the text for that. Really, Christianity spreads. Why? Because of the Roman roads throughout Europe. Buddhism in South Asia, Confucianism in East Asia, Taoism in East Asia, and then the Greeks find themselves really particularly because they don't believe in they believe in a pantheon of gods, but they don't really look at gods as explaining things as much as they look at rationalism and logic, and that's the thinkers of Plato and Aristotle that we know as the Greek tradition. However, Confucianism is also fairly logical. I have another. Yes, I do have an in general. Just so you know, those are the religions. Oh, don't forget Taoism, because we're all from Santa Barbara, and we all think that social hierarchies are lousy, and we just want to not do any work. We don't want to study. We don't want to do anything. We just want to go off on our water buffalo and just be in nature. And so Lao Tzu, the founder of Taoism, and really a focus on nature and finding harmony. In general, these religions provided some sort of salvation, some sort of promise that if you live a good life, there is hope for you. Because remember, most people around the world at this point in time are living at a subsistence level. They're growing enough food to make it. And sometimes they don't, and they die. So you are going to have these religions providing, especially poor people, a way of saying, oh, if I only do this, if I follow this religion, I will get hope. One of the things that also gives them, examples of salvation. In Buddhism, that's nirvana. In Christianity, that's heaven. In Hinduism, that is creating moksha and really finding uniting your soul with the universal Atman. You will see that in Hinduism. They're all codified and written into text, and it is your job to understand those texts and who wrote those. Confucianism is the Analects, is what is coming to my head right now. something that we really talked about, and we talk about a lot. Religions were used to gain and maintain power. Oftentimes, these empires would use religion in order to solidify and at the very least justify their authority. Right? We know that in China, the most famous one was the same thing that Caden and Logan do oftentimes, usually on Thursday evenings. They would go out together on a mandate, and a mandate of heaven, and you have the mandate of heaven that is happening where the son, the emperor is the son of heaven, and heaven gives him the blessing. In Christianity, you really see Constantine using Christianity as a defense for his authority and the reason why he wins the Battle of Milvian Bridge. In Hinduism, the Kshatriya warrior class are saying, well, that's what the god Purusha said, and so that's what's going to be. You see people justifying authority. They all spread outward. Some are missionary religions, some are not. Christianity, Buddhism are going to be missionary religions. Hinduism, not really a missionary religion. Zoroastrianism, not a missionary religion either. Judaism, also not really a missionary religion, although you do see people converting to all these religions. Again, providing both a justification for social hierarchy, but also challenging hierarchies as well. You see, particularly with Christianity. Christianity was considered dangerous to the Roman Empire because it said you don't need to follow Caesar. Pay him taxes, but your allegiance is not to Caesar, not to your governor. Your allegiance is to God. Buddhism said there is no social class of the caste system in Hinduism. Anybody can achieve it by eliminating the want in life. So you do have some of these religions challenging social hierarchies. Others, like Confucianism, with filial piety being right relationships, following your superiors and being good to your inferiors. And of course, Hinduism, with the caste system, is also going to support hierarchies as well. And then the last thing is you are going to see religion really influencing literature and architecture. And I don't necessarily have time to go through all of that, but we do see that. Lastly, to really look at, as we're sort of kind of running out of time, social hierarchies. And like I said, these are just things that are going to be developing. In our classic civilization comes the classic understanding of who should be doing who and who should be doing what in society. The defining and the stratification. Oh, I get it. Wow. It's been a night. Who should be doing what in society, really? Goodness gracious. The first example, and probably the most well-known example in world history, is the caste system. Something to understand about the caste system is it is based off of a creation story of the world, and the god Purusha, which sacrifices his body, and each of his parts of the body become a different caste. What you see is the Brahmins are at top. Brahmins are going to be Purusha's head. The Kshatriyas are going to be the arms. By the way, the head is going to be the religious leaders, those who are in charge of making sure people are, the spiritual well-being of the people is met. The arms and the torso are going to be the Kshatriyas because they're driving somewhere. It's a good time to stop.